Hey YouTube, this is EA and I'm back. It's been a couple of months, but I'm ready for my next video. This video is a two-part series. It is called Bridging the Gap Between Home and School. Part 1 is for the parents. I'm going to give you 10 tips that should help you bridge the gap between home and school. Okay, parents, when you first come to a school, please go and meet the teacher. Sometimes, you have to get to work. I understand that you have to get to work, so sometimes you have to just go drop them off. But within the first few days, please try to meet the teacher. And when you do meet the teacher, tell the teacher a little bit about yourself in a positive light. I've had an experience where parents come in, they give their story or their struggle, and it leaves an impression on the teacher. So even if you are going to give your struggle, always give them some good points about you too. And with that being said, introduce your children. Introduce your children with expectations. For example, when I take my daughters to school, I may say something like, "Hi, this is Jada. She's a straight A student, and um, I look forward to working with you so that we can keep her on her path." And I may tell about, some awards that she's won in the past or like some of her strong points. But I always validate my children, because when you don't, and the children don't always show what they can do, it just may not turn out as great as it could. Now, there are some parents who've introduced their children to me, but they did it they leaned in on the negative. Like, he's hard-headed, he shows out. If he does anything, call me, don't hesitate. I'll be up there to the school. So don't do that. But if they're not the best students, then you can point out some strengths that they have. If they're not academic, you can point out some social strengths, or nowadays you can point out some technological strengths, because we know that children really are technologically savvy, and most of them are more savvy than teachers. So that would be an impressive point. You want to give the teacher something good about your student in the beginning when they first meet. So be a little proactive on that, and don't just lean in on the negative. If you want to mention the behavior problems in the past, sure, but make sure that you say something positive about your child or children. Tip number 3, give the teacher a few ways to contact you. If you don't have a cell phone, go to the library and build you an email. Have an email. So you may want to say, hey, you can either contact me on my cell phone, via text message, email, or something. Have a way that they can contact you always, because sometimes when teachers can't contact you, then rather than using you, they go straight to the office, and your children will get in trouble that they could have avoided if you could have just been contacted as the parent. And you want for the teachers to always be able to contact you. Sometimes we have trouble with our phones, so if you had an email, that could work too. And I had to read my note, because this is important. Make sure your students, kindergarten or even pre-K through whatever, knows your number. There are so many students at school, when you say, hey, what's your mama's number? They say, I don't know. And that's kind of like a safety issue for them not to be able to contact you as a parent. You want to always have an environment where your children can contact you. Tip number 4. This is a big one. Don't send messages through your children, because children don't always give the verbal messages like you send them. And then if the teacher gets offended, she may say something back, or she may feel disrespected by your child and then the relationship is kind of strained, and sometimes I've seen that not work out too well with the teacher and the student. So if you do need to send a message, if it's an emergency or if it's a last minute thing, drop a note and send it to the teacher, because you don't want a situation where a teacher is talking at your child or saying something disrespectful back to your child because they're offended and the messages got crossed up. So again, use that text message or the email or the phone, or you can even call in the office and just leave a voicemail at your teacher's extension, because you don't want to create an environment of like disrespect. Tip number 5. Parents, please teach your children that you are their first line of defense. So many students get upset when teachers talk to them and they just go right back at them. It's just like almost like two people, two grown-ups arguing back and forth. What I tell my own personal children is the teacher is a teacher. You go to school to learn. You are to respect all of the adults in the building. If they say something to you or they do something to make you feel uncomfortable, then you come and tell me. I'm your first line of defense. I'm going to look into it, and then I'm going to solve it, and the problem is solved. Many times I've seen children like argue back and forth with the teachers, and then they end up getting in trouble, and sometimes their complaints are legitimate, and they never get their problem solved because they wouldn't allow the parents, the parent, to come in and solve the problem. They get so disrespectful, it turns into a situation where you come up and then the child is can't even be defended. I always tell the children, he who cannot be corrected can't be protected either. So you got to be careful with what you allow your students to do at school. And I know we all as parents, we tell our students, go sit, listen, stay out of people's business, listen to the teacher, do what she says. And that's beautiful, but that doesn't always happen. So parents, make sure, myself included, that we're talking to our children and we're telling them the right way to handle themselves. Tip number 6. Parents, when you talk about the teachers, your children become very disrespectful. I'm going to say that again. Parents, when you talk about the teachers, when you talk about them negatively, that is, your children become very disrespectful. You have to remember, you guys are a family, you're a unit. They're on your side. So if they feel like you don't like the teacher, they don't like the teacher either. And they will definitely let the teacher know. Some of them just come back and straight up say what y'all said. Like, my mama said you can't teach anyway. When they have that moment to launch the attack or to clap back. Those are some of the things that they say. So we want to be careful about that part. Find a friend, talk when you're not around the students, or even just call the teachers and, try to hash it out. Because after all, that teacher is responsible for teaching your child, and you have better results when you can work as a team rather than be enemies. I've had teachers in the past with my own children that I didn't dislike them, but I didn't care for their teaching style. So, sometimes I got upset, but I just offered suggestions and tried to help out more. And that's a good way, because teachers need help. Sometimes teaching is overwhelming. It's not an easy job. It's not an easy job, but it's a job that's done by special people. I think you have to be special to be a teacher. So, sometimes we need a break too. We need a hug. We need encouraging. So parents, kind of turn it around, and make it a win-win situation. Tip number 7, the home program. I learned how to build a home program because I was a very young mother, and I sent my child to school, and he was in a predominantly white school, so they act like they didn't understand him. And I was young, but I was working with my child at home. So one of the things that I did as a result of them calling me a lot is I went up there. It was kindergarten, and I sat in on a class. I started to volunteer, and I kind of just watched the way, the teacher taught and picked up on her style, the things that she used. So I went and built a little corner of my house that looked just like the school, where I had some learning blocks, some little word tiles, pencil papers, and all of that stuff. So a home program just supports the school program. And when you do stuff like that, then your children are less likely to try to get over on you, because they'll be like, shoot, my mom supports school, because when we get home, we have school corner right here. And it actually helps them. So what I would suggest is you put in like a map, have a dictionary, maybe encyclopedia. If you have technology, you have technology where they can get on, maybe like Study Island. If the school has Study Island, it'll be free. You can get on Khan Academy, it's free. ABC Learning. So there are some videos also on YouTube that can help enhance their learning. You may want to have calculators, pencils, papers, markers, crayons, books. But if you can't afford to get these things, and sometimes you just can't, you can get them from the schools. Most Title I schools, if your child is in Title I, they have resources. We have all kind of community partners, so you should be able to go up there and ask your teacher or the librarian, and they can get you together some packets. Maybe, check out some books from your classroom library, or the school library has books for children to check out as well. So you can build you a little station. Also, parents, play games with your children. Play games with them. Ask them questions. Once you start playing games, you can kind of get a feel of their personality, their strengths, their weaknesses, if they endure, if they give up easily. Because what you learn playing games with them is exactly how they're going to respond to challenges at school. So then when the teacher talks to you, you guys will be on the same page, and you'll be able to give her pointers and help her out to get past some of that, those areas. And if your children just turn out to be brilliant, you can give the teacher pointers on how to pull out the brilliance in your child. So a home program or a little study area is important to have in bridging the gap between home and school. Tip number 8. This is another big one. Stop telling your children to fight. Please, please, please stop telling your children to fight, because they do not understand what you mean. I know what you mean, because I used to tell my children the same thing. Somebody hit you, you hit them back. That's how I started. That is not how I ended. And I'm going to tell you why. Because after years of teaching, it just doesn't work. Because children, they start fighting if somebody accidentally bump into them. If they don't see them and they try to say, excuse me, it's still going to be a fight, because those children feel like they got contacted, they got hit. They call everything a hit. He hit me first, she hit me first. If you get up in their face, she got up in my face. She wouldn't stop messing with me. And I always have to say, what's messing with me? But she wouldn't stop messing with me. And she looked at me and she said she wanted to fight me. So they just start fighting from any reason as soon as you give them permission to fight. So instead, I think that we should try something else, because at schools, we can't allow them to fight. We can't. It's against the school code of conduct. And parents, you guys signed that paperwork. You signed the paperwork in support that students will not be allowed to fight and all that other stuff. So when you do send them to school to fight, if you don't agree with what I'm saying, and some people may not, but when you do send them to school to fight and they get in trouble, tell them not to have the meltdowns, because they have the meltdowns. When they know they're going to get in big trouble, oh my God, some of them flip over desks, they throwing chairs, they doing all kind of crazy stuff. So if you are going to tell them to fight, then you have to tell them what the consequences are going to be. And you as a parent can't get upset either when they get suspended, whether you think the fight is fair or not. Because for us, fighting is fighting. If one hits the other, that's considered a fight. And depending on who works it, you can be sent home. So, I mean, if you're going to be in agreement to the fight, be in agreement to the punishment as well. But as an educator, I over the years, I figured out that most fights come because we just don't have problem solving skills. So what you can do rather than fight is tell your children to tell, and I know you guys do, but then they come back and they say the teacher didn't do nothing. And most children do that too. So what I tell my own children is find a teacher that you trust, that you know will do something, and you go tell that teacher. And you keep telling that teacher until the third time. We usually don't get to the third time because I intervene, because my children tell me too. But you keep telling that same teacher. But another thing that you can do is write a letter with your child. Sit down and have your child write the letter. Then you can kind of see if it's a justified real reason to fight, or if it may have been an accident or a misunderstanding. Then you can teach your child how to go from there. And then we can teach them how to engage with each other without fighting. One thing that I did as a teacher is I had a peace path in my room. So the peace path was a literal path that I put down, and it had words on the side. So they would read the words, and they actually had to talk to each other. One person, the one that's offended, stated, I don't like it when you hit me. When you hit me, I feel whatever. And this person says, you don't like it when I hit you? And then they say no. And then you go to the next square. Then this person says, I don't want you to hit me again. And then they repeat. And then they establish a peaceful resolve by the time they get to the end of the peace path. And if that doesn't work, then they work it out together on that part. If it doesn't work, then they come to me as a teacher and I mediate. And what I'm doing is giving them the tools to figure out how to solve the problems between me. Because I usually say, do y'all want me to solve it? Or are you going to solve it? Because if I solve it, if both people hit, you can go home. But if you solve it and you come tell me how you solved it, we can work with it. I have something to work with. So it forces them to think. But we have to get out of just saying fight, because they fight for everything. They fight for what you say. If they look at you, if they get too close to you, whatever they don't like, it becomes a fight. And when we do that, we teach our children to be enemies. They grow up with that, and then they just get bigger and better. And at the end of the day, it's more self-hatred in our community, and we definitely don't want that. So moving right along to tip number 9. Parents, here's another one. Please, let's stop telling these babies that they have anger problems. They don't really have anger problems. They just don't know how to solve problems. But children who tend to get in trouble a lot, they're frustrated because they can't do the work. So when they get in trouble, some of them are getting in trouble to avoid doing the work. So then they get a pattern going, and people pass it on. This little boy right here, he's trouble. And then they earn that name. And then the school is saying, Mama, we have to do something. So you go find the counselor. The counselor talks to them and say, when do you feel angry? How often do you feel angry? Well, when you're talking to children, they put that on themselves. And they say, I have an anger problem. Just the other day, I said, how many of you guys have anger problems in here in one of my classes? Man, 90% of the children's hands went up. So we talked about what anger was. So by the end of the conversation, we all came to the conclusion that they really don't have anger problems. They just don't have the tools to solve problems. So what I did for my students is I told them a story about, first of all, I told them everybody gets frustrated. It's just a part of life. It's just the way it is. And you have to work through it and you have to work it out. But sometimes you do get angry. But that don't mean you have an anger problem. So I told them about one time when I got angry, but it didn't turn out right because I didn't make the right decisions. And once I told them that and I got in trouble, then they felt like they could relate to me. So a few of the little boys that really get in trouble a lot with anger problems, they came up to me after class and they was like, dang, Miss Bell, I kind of felt like you feel. And that's how I was doing it. But I gave them another perspective, another way to look at it, and another way to solve their problems. So now we're working on them saying, sometimes I get frustrated, or when I can't do this, it's hard for me, or people are talking, I can't concentrate. So we're dealing with the real issues rather than them just carrying a label because they don't understand something. It's just either a lack of understanding or they don't have the tools to problem solve. Next, along with that, with all that anger, people want you to take your children to the doctors and get medication. And for some parents, they come back and they say the medication is working. But before, I would just say this, parents, before you put your children on medication for having anger problems, you might want to consider rearranging your life. Does your life support the life of rearing your children? Sometimes we get jobs at odd times. Maybe you should focus on jobs that you can get during the times where you can have free time with your children, or do something to where you can give your children that attention on a regular basis, rather than succumb to the medications. Because sometimes it's us as the parents. Sometimes you need to stop talking in front of your children, stop exposing them to everything, rearrange some stuff. Stop letting them be up at all times of the night, because they come tell us everything. My mama don't say nothing when I play the game. They playing the game all night, and then they come to school. Well, then, yeah, you're going to have symptoms and signs of everything that's not natural or normal. But sometimes it's us. And we can avoid the medication if we just discipline ourselves and say, hey, we have children and they need this kind of structured environment. And if you don't know, there's YouTube, there's your friends, there's your mamas, there's your grandmas. There's a lot of people who can give you advice. That's how I learned to be a parent. I started asking people when I got in trouble, when I couldn't figure out something because I was young. I would just call somebody and say, hey, if my son is doing this, what should I do to stop that? Because, man, I can't handle that. That's crazy. So they would give me sound advice. Go to your elders and start rearranging some stuff so that your children don't have to be so far off their squares. Because, you can choose medicine, and that's fine if that's what you want to do. I don't suggest medication for nobody's, especially elementary children. That's rather young to start somebody taking drugs to alter a behavior when you can just teach them how to act. So, children who have problems too, they need a lot of validation. They missed out on some lap time, so we have to give them that validation. That's parents and teachers, get everybody in on, getting that self-esteem back together for those children so that they don't have to act out. Another thing that you can do, one of my college professors gave me this one. She said she had boys, and they were a little rambunctious, and they were kind of jealous of each other. If she wanted to give one something and the other something different, they would have fallout. So she started pulling them right before bed, and she gave them 15 minutes apiece by themselves, and it actually curved the behavior of the second child who was starting to act out. So spend a little quality time with your children. Parents, don't bend on your rules. Don't bend on your rules. When children are supposed to do something, that's just what they're supposed to do. Don't feel sorry for them, because they're more resilient than we are. They can do it. At school, I'm like a taskmaster teacher. I want them to be working, and I push them very hard, and they do it for me. So I know if they do it for me, they can do it at home for you. But they give all the best excuses. They give them to me too. That's why I know they're giving them to you, because they're real good at it. But I just don't accept it. So you don't have to accept it either. Give them tasks. They really can do it. These children are smart, especially African-American children. They just fail because they choose not to do it, not because they can't do it. They can do it. They just choose not to. And if they can get away with it, they just get away with it. They'll whine, throw fits, use 10,000 excuses about somebody else bothering them, not letting them do it. Those are all excuses. So, stop taking all them excuses and make those children buckle down and get after it. Have high expectations for your students, because they really can do it. If you set the bar low, they're not going to go far. You can set it high. And I don't care if you didn't set the bar high for yourself. You might have went to school and you may not have made it, or you may be struggling. That don't mean your children have to struggle. You set the bar high and you make them go for it. And no means no. The reason I'm saying no means no is because when children get in trouble sometimes at school, we hear the parents, y'all get on the phone, y'all tell them everything that they not going to get. You not going to play in that game Saturday? I don't care what your coach say. You not getting them shoes? Y'all run down the list. You know what happens on Monday when they come back to school? They come straight back in. Disrespectful as the day is long, and they say, Miss Bell, I went to that game. I played in the game. And I got my new shoes on. So when you say no, let it mean no. Because you're teaching your children to be disrespectful to the teachers because those consequences. And they're being disrespectful to you as well. Because they come back bragging like, she ain't going to do nothing. Some of them even say that. Call her. She ain't going to do nothing. So, we got to stick to our guns and, make these children do what they have to do because we want them to be better. We want them to be successful. And last but not least, this is your part. Every parent is a great parent. Even the struggling parents can be great parents. Struggling parents who are trying to make it, some parents have fallout, don't get me wrong. They just fall all the way out for whatever reasons and they don't come back. But some parents are struggling, and I think all parents, the ones who fall out are not, until they get to the point of no return, want what's best for their children. So, parents, I need you to comment below all of your positive strategies that helped you bridge the gap between home and school. And I'm going to tell my parents in my school about this video so they can get on and read. A parent came to one of the teachers the other day, and she said, I was a high school dropout, and I don't know what to do to help my children. She has 3 children. None of them are where they're supposed to be. The younger ones, I think first grade, they're like first, second, third, or somewhere in there. But they all struggle with reading. So when I thought about this, I thought, man, I should do this video so that I can help. So that's one of the reasons why I did this video. So parents, if you would, make some positive comments below so we can continue to better our students. Because in the end, we want them all to win. Thank you for listening. Please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. And video number 2 will be coming at you in just a few minutes. Thank you. Peace.